Hi, good afternoon. I actually was going to say good morning, but I realized it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Just so that I get a good thumbs up, everybody can hear me clearly? Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. Thank you, Veronica, for the introduction. We are doing the CAEP data submission guidelines with an emphasis on the data submission wizard. Like she said, my name is Nicole Jordan. I'm a senior data analyst at CASAS. So let's move on. So a quick overview of the presentation, that way you can tell where your questions will reside and what I'm going to go over in the PowerPoint. So the first thing that we'll go over is an overview of the data submission requirements. Then we're going to talk about the data review. That includes preparing your data. We'll go over the CAEP summary report and then the CAEP data integrity report. Lastly, we'll go over the quarterly data submission wizard. That includes the wizard steps and then how to confirm that you've submitted your data. I will also, if time permits, we'll go into TopsPro Enterprise so that I can give you a step-by-step in the system on how to complete the data submission wizard. So first section, an overview of the data submission requirements. Quickly, what deliverables are due and when they are due. For adult schools, and I put that little star for adult schools, agencies are required to submit their first quarter TopsPro Enterprise data and then their first quarter CAEP data integrity report. And data integrity report, for those who are new, we like to say is the DIR. So you'll hear me use that acronym. Now, this is due October 31st, 2020. For that star, we talk about community colleges. Now, if you are a community college, some of you may be in TE and by TE, I mean TopsPro, because maybe you're a WIOA agency, so you can submit through TE, but if you are a community college that is not in TopsPro Enterprise, then that information will be submitted through your MIS system. Now, how to submit the deliverables. For the first quarter TopsPro Enterprise data, all the data will be entered manually into TE. There's nothing to send. Our online server will host all the data. For the quarterly data submission, or for the data integrity report, or DIR, we have our quarterly data submission wizard, and that's how you'll submit the data. We'll come back to the quarterly data submission wizard, but let's go first through the data review. Now, TE data. I have a quick checklist here, and like I said, this is a quick checklist. You may want to refer to some of the recorded webinars on the website for a long list of accountability requirements and stuff like that. First off, want to review our class instances and then our instructional programs. Have you entered in all your classes? Are they marked correctly for their instructional programs? Next is enter and verify that your daily and that you've entered daily and updated cumulated attendance hours. Now, anything that's happened since COVID, if you're teaching remotely, needs to be entered in as distance learning minutes. Entered and verified all assessments. Maybe you've had some remote testing done on paper. Maybe you've done this through e-tests and you're entering them into TE or exporting them, importing them into TE, making sure that all that data is there. And then cleaning up student information, making sure you don't have any duplicated students, marking any services if applicable, that includes supportive, training, and transition, and then marking any barriers to employment. If any of your students have outcomes, this may be a little too early in the year to have outcomes, but in that off case, you can enter any outcomes for students. Next, we'll talk about the CAEP summary report. And this report will help you understand all your CAEP data. To get to that report in TopsPro Enterprise, you'll go to Reports, State Reports, California, and then CAEP Tables. When you generate the report, there will be about 5 other reports, but we'll look at the CAEP summary as our most important one. Now, this summary will display multiple outcomes into 3 different sections. We have our section 1, which is columns B through D, section 2, which is columns E through L, and then section 3, which is columns M through R. Now, our section 1, that's our literacy gains and NRS Table 4 guidelines. Do they have 12 hours of instruction, pre or post testing? This follows more of the WIOA2 guidelines. They'll be in those 3 columns. Now we're looking in section 2, that's columns E through L. These are other AB 104 outcomes that are used for reporting requirements, but they don't require that pre and post tests. So maybe you have more students in this section. Now in section 3 is our bigger section. Now these include students that have received services, but they don't impose those WIOA2 reporting requirements. So maybe you have a lot of students, a majority of the students will be in that services section. Now I want to talk more about drilling down on reports. So once you've generated your CAEP summary report, and this also applies to other reports that you may want to generate in TE, you have about 2 options. First is double clicking a cell, and then you can also right click on a cell. Now, if I were to double click on, let's say, column B, program area ESL, ELL, that has 1,973 students. If I double click on that, I'll be provided a lister with 1,973 students. I can go in, I can see what their demographic information is, including their birth date, gender, races, and their instructional programs. If I need to make any data or edits to my data, I can filter for there to see who needs to be edited. Now, if I right click on that same cell, 4 listers and then about 6 different drill down reports come up. I suggest going through all these different listers. The first one in the lister is a student program year population. That will lead you to the same place as if you were to double click a cell. Now we have our drill down to NRS monitor, drill down to outcomes monitor. So if you see that maybe your services or your outcomes don't accurately reflect what you've entered into TE, you may want to drill down to those and then correct the data from there. So now we'll talk about the CAEP data integrity report, because that is what is due. And I suggest that all agencies generate this report before they go through the quarterly data submission wizard. So that's why we're talking about it before. Now to generate this report, you'll go into reports, state reports, California, and then CAEP data integrity. You'll see this screen exactly as is. This is the default. It'll select current program year. It'll have the programs automatically checked off for you. To run the report as how you'll be submitting it, leave these default parameters as is. You can go ahead and change a couple things. Maybe you want to include citizenship, but that'll change what's actually going to be submitted to CASAS. So leave this as a default. Then once you're ready, you'll click generate at the very top and your report will show up. Now this is the first table that will show up in the data integrity report. It'll have the students in your services section. That's like your big chunk of students. If they weren't enrolled in any of the 7 CAEP programs, and it'll show you which ones they're not enrolled in. And then finally, it'll give you the students who are enrolled in the 7 CAEP programs. So that's the students and services section, minus is the students not enrolled in the 7 CAEP programs, and that equals what we have. Now we'll subtract those that are concurrently enrolled in high school K-12, and those will be the students in the data integrity report. In this case, we have 6,616 students who will be included in the data integrity report. Okay, now we'll talk about the item descriptions. We have about 27 plus because we have a part and a B part, and each item will have a description to what that item is and then their item count. Now to get the item percentage, what you'll do is you'll take the item count and then you'll divide that by the students eligible for the data integrity report, and that'll equal the item percentage. So in this example, we have, let's take item number 2, those with less than 12 hours of instruction. We have 2,251 students. We'll divide that by 6,616 students, and then we'll get our 34.02%. I see some questions in the chat, so let me see if I can answer them. Do we filter for the date to first quarter to fiscal year, or is it not necessary? It's not necessary, Alma. You can generate as is, or you can filter for first quarter. It all depends on what you're looking at, but when it generates in the quarterly data submission, it'll be at the time the report was generated. Concurrent students do not need to be imported. Janice, I may need your assistance on that question. Let's see if we can get her. Do you know if, but I would assume they need to be imported, but I don't, maybe Janice has some detailed.
I think there's some details about the exact age of the concurrent student. Adult ed tends to be 18 and up. Sometimes you will have an unusual concurrent student that might be as young as 16. And I do believe there might have been a shift recently in some of those rules. I'll need to check with Jay Wright and get back to you. Is that, can you give me your email? Is that Estelle Castanon? Please, and just put that in the chat and I'll follow up with you on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah, I see your question. Will the percentage be done by the program? Are you referring to instructional program? If you're referring to instructional program, the data integrity report does not break down by instructional program, but this is where you can go back into the default parameters and maybe select only ESL, and then you can generate the report again and it'll break it down by instructional program. So whatever default settings you set at the very beginning, it'll break it down. The chart that she is showing. So yeah, so this report, the chart that I'm showing right now won't break it down by instructional program. You'll have to go back to the default and then break it down there. But for submission, we want to get everybody. So that's why we'll generate it with all 7 CAEP programs and leave the default parameters as is. Okay, do I have any other questions about the CAEP data integrity report? Our next section will be the quarterly data submission wizard. I'm not seeing any questions. And Sarah, I think I will get back to you on your questions. We'll talk a little bit more about it after. Okay, so Javi, we'll get to how we submit. So now we'll talk to quarterly data. Now we're talking about the quarterly data submission wizard. So let's talk about what the quarterly data submission wizard will submit. We have for WIOA Title II agencies and for CAEP agencies. So if you're both, you can submit both of these at the same exact time. We'll focus on CAEP. It'll submit your data and then it'll record and generate your CAEP DIR. On the CASAS website, we have instructions on step-by-step instructions on how to submit or how to use the CAEP quarterly data submission wizard, and I've left the link there. So our first step is, I say, prepare our data. We've done that, right? We've already gone and entered in all of the hours, all the tests, all the whatever we needed to. We've done that. We've also generated our CAEP summary report. We've looked at it and make sure that everything looks good. We've entered as many services as we can. If we have outcomes, probably not this quarter, maybe next year. And then we've made any corrections to our data. Now I say you need to run these reports before the quarterly data submission wizard because you can only run the submission wizard one time. So we want to make any corrections before we go through the wizard. Now, the next thing we'll do is we'll click under tools and then quarterly data submission wizard. I have a little screenshot there to show you where it's at. The next thing you'll do is you'll select the data submission quarter, the purpose, and the program year. This will be done over three different three different pop-up menus. So the first one, you'll select your agency and the program year. Then you'll select your data submission quarter. You're not allowed to submit in future quarters, so that's why those have been grayed out. And then in the last one, you'll submit your purpose. And by purpose, we mean, are you submitting for WIOA, CAEP, or both? In my example, we'll only do CAEP since this is a CAEP focused training. We always select both. So if you are a WIOA and CAEP agency, yeah, it'll be easier if you select both, but maybe you've only entered your WIOA data up to a certain date and you want to go ahead and send that off. You can select WIOA only and then come back and then select CAEP. So you can either kill two birds with one stone or you can select both. Now, if you are only a CAEP agency, this screen will bypass the screen. Topps Pro Enterprise will know that you're only a CAEP agency, and that way you won't have to choose both. Next, the wizard will generate your CAEP data integrity report. You can look at it here, verify that it looks exactly how you generated it outside of the wizard. And here you can print and export a copy of the DIR. You'll have the opportunity to do it again, but this is your first opportunity too. You can't make any changes in the wizard. So if you need to go back and select and change anything, you'll need to exit the wizard and then make the changes, go through the wizard one more time. Once you're okay with your CAEP data integrity report, then you'll click next. A screen like this will pop up. It'll say, have you reviewed and corrected any flags that you've seen on your CAEP DIR? And then you can write any comments. So maybe you don't have any data in Q1 because you're just getting started, and this next quarter is when all your students are going to get post tested. That's when your agency is opening up. Maybe that's a comment that you want to make in that comment section. Now, I've also noted again, for quarters 1 through 3, agencies are only allowed to submit one time. For end of year submissions, we know how important end of year submissions are, so you'll be able to resubmit multiple times. Now I see, I'm looking at Tashel's question. For quarters 1 through 3, data is always tentative, right? Meaning the data can still be changed. Yes, so it can all still be edited after the fact. If you had a student or whatever, you can always go back, but that end of year data is that final save. But I would encourage agencies to enter in as much data as they can correctly, quarter by quarter. I'm sure that'll save a lot of time rather than June comes along and you need to go and correct anything that happened. So before I move on to how to confirm your data submission from the quarterly data submission wizard, do I have any questions? And we're making pretty good time so we can answer anything. I don't see anything. So now we'll talk about confirming your data submission. And this is how you'll tell that you've ran the wizard correctly. Has the person in your agency ran the wizard correctly? Maybe you are the director and maybe your data manager is the person that's going to go ahead and run the wizard, and you want to see what has been submitted. What you'll do is you'll go under organization, you'll go to your agency, and then you'll check on quarterly data submission in the navigator on the left. A screen like this will appear, so we can see that we've submitted for quarter 2021 Q1 for WIOA and CAEP. Was it late? No, it wasn't. When was it generated? In this case, it was generated 2 days ago. Who was the person that generated it? And then their name. When I would double click on this, and I can show this when we go into TE, you'll be able to see what they've checked, any of the comments, and then you'll actually be able to double click and then see the data integrity report that was submitted. I have a question. So I see your question, Virginia. If you have import updates after 9:30 for classes that started in August, will the updates show on the quarterly quarterly report. I'll have to double check on this, and maybe this is something that Janice can answer for me in the chat.
I'll try this one, sure.
Yeah.
Virginia, your question about updates. If you think about it this way, you have a record date. That's the date that you put the information into TOPS Pro Enterprise. So the record date of the update, if it's after 9:30, then that's correct. It will not be included in that first quarterly data report. If you were to run the DIR today, October 14th, it would be in there because the DIR is always running in a kind of a accumulated method so that you'll have a snapshot in time based on today. The quarter 1, 2, and 3 reports, and I think Tashelle asked that question a little earlier, the data submissions for Q1, Q2, and Q3, it's a placeholder in time that reflects what the agency had as of that moment, but it is kind of a running total and things are moving around and you're adding attendance and student outcomes. The one that's really hard and fast is the one that comes the end of June, which is the end of the year. Hopefully that helps a little bit. There was also a question about if the 31st falls on a Saturday, which I think it does this year, we should submit on Friday the 30th. Is that correct, Nicole?
I would encourage you to submit on Friday the 30th. I'm sure that's your business day, but if you do work on a Saturday and that's the day you need to submit, then you can submit on that Saturday. If it's now 12:01 on Sunday, the wizard will show that it is a late submission. It's all automatic in the system. So you're not going to be marked as having it late if you submit on Saturday, but I'll always, try to encourage you to do it on the Friday. CAEP allow, okay. Thank you, Marianne. That's something that we will take into consideration, and I can talk to our programmers about that. Yes, and Diana, you can submit earlier whenever it's ready. We've had users already submit their CAEP reports, and as long as everything's entered in and you will not have to go back and make any corrections, you can submit now. Now, I want to quickly say that we will still be sending out data submission confirmation emails. It's not going to be maybe as quick as we did previously, but your agency's primary contact will still receive these deliverable confirmation emails. Okay, so I made it to the important links slide. So what I'll do now is I want to go into TE and then we can do a step-by-step actual visualization in TE. So let me find my cursor. There it is. Now I'm on the Rolling Hills simulation, and you can, anybody with CAEP, that's CAEP funded, you can get onto the simulation as well. Can use even the credentials that you see on the screen. It's for agencies to go in and kind of look at listers and make edits and try things out on a simulation agency instead of your own agency, because maybe you don't want to mess anything up. So I've entered. Now I want to run let's go into the reports that we need to run first. So for the reports, just to make sure that our data is correct, we'll go to reports, state reports, California. We have the CAEP Consortium Manager tables, and we can see what any person that is a CAEP manager in TE is able to generate. We have the CAEP tables, and we have the CAEP data integrity report. So let's just do the CAEP tables first. I'm not going to go ahead and generate it so that we don't waste time, but here are the default parameters. If I go under report selection, I can see all the CAEP tables that will generate. I can say, okay, no, I don't want CAEP outcome services or program hours right now. And then I'll click the generate here to generate the report. Very similarly, I can do this with the CAEP DIR, but let's just say in this case that we are good and I have confirmed everything I've seen on my CAEP summary, and I've confirmed everything that I've seen on my data integrity report. So I'm ready to do the quarterly data submission wizard. To do that, I'll go to Tools, Quarterly Data Submission Wizard. I am Rolling Hills in this case, and yes, the program year is 2021. There are some other options, but we won't go into that. I'll click next. Okay, select the quarter. So I have quarter 1. Now, if we're in quarter 2 and I haven't done quarter 1, I'll have to run quarter 1 before I run quarter 2. Next. Let's also it down just a bit. Now we have the data submission purpose. And in Rolling Hills case, Rolling Hills is both a WIOA agency and then a CAEP agency. But for this webinar only, we'll go through CAEP. We'll do CAEP only. So now I'll click next. Now this is just a screen that's going to tell me that I'm going to run the CAEP DIR report. I'll click next. It'll take some time to generate, especially depending on the size of your agency. So maybe you're a huge agency, it might take a little while. But if I'm a smaller agency with only a couple students, it's not going to take too long to run. So our CAEP data integrity report showed up. Now I have the option to export. I can export to PDF. I can look through, okay. So students and services section, that looks good. Now here are the students enrolled in my programs, that's good. Now I have 28 students who don't have a missing birth date or outside, that sounds about right. Now the 28 students divided by the 6,614 students who are included in this report, that's going to equal my item percentage. So 0.42% are missing their birth date. Okay, that sounds like a good percentage for me. Now less than 12 hours of instruction, maybe the 2,000 students seems like a big number to me. I want to go back and check that I've entered in hours correctly. If I need to do that, I'll need to cancel out right now and then go into the CAEP DIR and then correct it from there. But now let's just say that everything looks correct so we can move on. Now here, okay, so once I click once, I'm not going to be able to run the wizard again. I can check comments. I can write like great year so far, right? And then once I click finish, I won't be able to go back. I won't be able to generate this report again, but I feel confident in what I'm submitting, so I'll click finish. And now to export the data integrity report again, if I feel like it, maybe I want to send that to my director, whoever, and I can do that here. So I'll exit. So before I go and I check if that everything was submitted, let me go through these tables again, just so I can slow it down a little bit. So we're talking about the reports that I want to review before I generate the quarterly data submission wizard. To do that, I'm going to go to reports, then I'll go to state reports, California, and then I'll go to CAEP tables. Here I can choose the program year. If it is the current program year, I'll leave it. And then these are the instructional programs that'll be included in my CAEP summary report. For the rest, I will keep as is, we are good. Now for the report selection, I have this the option to deselect these reports, or I can select them just depending on if I want to look at those or not. Now, if I'm good, I'll click generate. I can review the reports again. So I have some questions here in the chat before I go and look. Now, is there a breakdown of acceptable percentages by DIR item? And there is no acceptable percentages by DIR item. I think there is an average, but depending on how your agency is and what's happening in your agency, those things are going to change from agency to agency. So we no longer need to email the DIR report. Correct. You no longer need to email the data integrity report as long as you're running the wizard. And if you email me, I will probably email you back saying run it through the wizard. Meaning percentages that are above certain. Now, Tashelle, I think that this might be a question you might want to have in maybe your consortiums, because that could vary from region to region. And I'm not sure if Janice has any other suggestions for you too. Now, why does the TE consortium report option doesn't appear? Beverly, if you are not the consortium manager, it won't appear on your TE instance. And sorry, Janice, I think I cut you off about the percentages for DIR.
I was typing, so I missed the question, but I see what Tashelle is asking about percentages that you could look at as a general guideline, and I would have to dig for that, Tashelle, and get back to you on it.
And a question, so by keeping the instructional program areas default, how are citizenship students captured? Now, Janie, I don't know if you are a WIOA agency, but there is a certain way to mark them. They are ESL students as instructional program. And then maybe you'll enter in their special area or their focus area, and then maybe your special programs. So that's in the student records, if I'm correct, Janice, on how you would mark that.
Again, sorry. You know, it's so hard with the chat because I'm reading the questions and I'm thinking about the answers and I was going to go off. Please, could you repeat that, Nicole?
So she has a question, by keeping the instructional program areas default, how are citizenship students captured? And they should be captured in the ESL instructional program if they are WIOS or and CAEP too, correct?
Right. When I think about citizenship students, I think about the reports that are generated that show what we call the additional assessments reports. And it goes down and it shows which students have taken, different kinds of COAPs and citizenship assessments. I believe there are reports that go into that level of detail. Off the top of my head, I don't have that handy. I know Lori Howard, lbhoward@casas.org, might be able to answer that question immediately for you, but I don't think she's on the line. I'm looking in the participants. I don't see her with us today.
Thank you. And Ron, I see your question. Can I expand about the comment section? Who gets these comments? These comments will be saved into our TOPS Pro Enterprise data, so we can share those comments with TAP or Neil, whoever needs to see them, or they can just be shared with us at CASAS, but they can also be as a note for you. So it's something that we can pull if somebody needs to see it. So yes. Okay. So I think we have some comments, Janice, that maybe can be taken out of here, but okay. Okay, so now let's go back to this. Now we are looking at how we can confirm that we've done the wizard correctly and that everything has been submitted. So to do that, I'll go to organizations, then I'll go to agencies. I can double click my agency. I will go here. So under the navigator, I'll scroll down. It's quite towards the bottom. Quarterly data submission. And then here I'll see that it's CAEP. And then I think because it's rolling hills that the last generation date is a little off, but just we can ignore that. It was generated on time. And that it was administrator0@ourhouse.org. And that my last name is administrator00. And we can see for the program year, the quarter, and then the purpose. I can also double click here. I can see that I've commented that it's a great year so far, and I've checked off that I've reviewed and corrected data flags in CAEP. Here was my session name, and then I have my file. If I click on that, maybe I need to double click. Now here is my CAEP data integrity report that I submitted. I still recommend that maybe you save a copy somewhere that everybody in your agency can look at, because that is a common question. How do I see what I've submitted? And I know if there is a new administrator that wants to come in and review these reports, they can go in and review this report as well. So I see a question just to make sure, do I pick the report first in reports, then go to the wizard and submit? No, so you can go to the wizard and then it will be, the only thing that needs to be submitted is the CAEP data integrity report. And that's the report, that's the only report that needs to be submitted. That's the only requirement. But yes, like Janice mentioned in the chat, you want to run the reports first to fix any mistakes or something that you've omitted. And by running the CAEP summary report and the CAEP data integrity report, looking at those two reports together and making sure that they reflect what's happening in your agency, those are the two reports that we recommend looking at to make sure that when you submit that everything looks good. Is the consortium manager able to see who has submitted? Yes, so anybody associated with this agency is able to see what has been submitted, whether I'm the administrator 000 or if I'm administrator 02. If I'm the director of Rolling Hills in this case, I can go in again onto this navigator. I can see the quarterly data submission and I can look here. So anybody has access to see who has generated the report and what the report looks like. You don't need to be the consortium. You can be the consortium manager. You can be just the director. You can be the data manager or whoever, and we can see who's generated the report. Any other questions before I go back to the presentation? So I will go back. So we'll go back to import. Oh, escape. Okay, so bear with me while I click through here. So here's our QDS. Now, once again, we're going to prepare our data. Then we're going to go to quarterly data submission wizard. We're going to click through our screens, whether we are WIA or both. We'll click finish. We'll export and save our reports. We can check that we have submitted under the quarterly data submission in our under organization and our agency. And then we'll get our confirmation emails, may take a day or two, or so it doesn't happen simultaneously, and your agency's primary contact will receive that. Okay, so I see a question from Tashelle. Normally CAEP deliverables are occurring at the agency level instead of the consortium level. Will this continue with the wizard? Yes, so it will actually, you know, I'm gonna need to double check on that. I believe though that if you are logged in at your agency, then you'll be able to select, then you're running the quarterly data submission wizard at your agency. But I will have to get back to you on that question, Michelle, because that gave me a scenario that I want to look into. From John Taylor, and this is probably a question for those of you who are funded for WIOA Title II, and that may not be everybody, but does the Student Core Performance Employment Survey get automatically submitted using the wizard? No. If you are a WIOA Title II agency and you are required to do the employment and earnings follow-up survey, that's one of the things that does not get completed in the quarterly data submission wizard. That'll need to happen outside of the wizard. But for those of you who are primary or only CAEP funded agencies, everything will be submitted through the wizard. So here I have important links. We have the CAEP beginning of the year letter. We have our CAEP accountability basics for those who are new and need some more information about accountability. Then I've also included a link to our quarterly data submission wizard instructions. If you want to listen to this presentation and then also look through the step-by-step notes, You can do that. And then we've also included our statewide and regional network meetings. Janice, if you can confirm, I think that CAEP agencies still have the availability to go in and participate in the network meetings that CASAS holds. Can you confirm?
Absolutely. We love to have CAEP agencies attend the monthly network meetings. It's a chance to share and ask questions. And I know with the last round of new agencies being adopted into WIOA, it's the ones that got involved and made friends and learned the ropes in advance. So they knew what things to put on the application and how to push their agency forward into the next level of funding with WIOA. So I definitely would welcome anyone that wants to come. It's the program specialists usually offer them the second week, sometimes the third week of each month. It's a chance to get together. You can go on to caadultedtraining.org and look and see. In the old days, we organized ourselves geographically. So we had North counties and then Orange County and San Diego and Central Coast. But now it's a little bit more diverse because of the way that the CDE has split up the consultants for the new program year, but you're welcome to attend whichever one fits your schedule. And usually there's a program specialist, and either Jay or I attend a lot of them so that we can offer any technical tidbits or TE updates, things like that.
Thank you.
Lydia mentioned that they're WIOA focused though, but depending on the attendees, we'll kind of go off a little bit on a tangent and try to answer whatever questions people bring.
Thank you. Now we have our CASAS resources. So our tech support team is always available. We have their email here. And then we have the caep@casas.org. That's if you have any questions about your deliverables or data. And then you can always email data@casas.org. You're pretty much going to hit the same people at either one of those emails. So you can choose which one you want to email. And yes, I do agree too, like in the chat, our tech support team is very awesome. They're great. They're a team of staff members. So when you either call in, because you can call in even though we are working remotely, you can still call in, talk to somebody one-on-one. I will give you a little is if you plan on calling in the last week, this October 30th, that day will be very, very busy for tech support and maybe some of those days before. So if you have questions on your data right now, or if you're having any technical issues, importing issues, give them a call right now. Their workload isn't as big as it would be that last week. It gets very busy that last week. You can always send an email if it's not urgent, or if you have any remote testing questions, then go ahead and give them a call now, that's for sure.
And really the way that I used to like to interface with the tech support team before I came over to CASAS is I would send them my problem and my question, and I would include whatever documentation or copies of exported reports with it. And then I would give them a good number to reach me at. And I'd say, you know, if you can call me either Monday, Wednesday, or Friday before 9 a.m., that's the best time to reach me. And then tech support will take that and they kind of have like a calendar, a master calendar among themselves, and you'll be able to get a hold of someone. Or the other kind of a trick, Laurel starts really early in the morning, like 6 a.m. So if you can be an early bird and try to get into tech support and hit option 2, you might get Laurel first thing, and that way you're not in the queue with everybody else that comes on board at 9 o'clock.
Yes. Now, any other questions, anything about the entire presentation? I also will say that you can email me if you have questions about the quarterly data submission wizard or your submissions. I'm not as technical as maybe some of those in the tech support team. But if you have any questions about the wizard, I can definitely answer those. I'm very open to talking with you one-on-one.
You know, Nicole, there was one question. I didn't want Margarita to think that I ignored her. It kind of flew by when there was a flurry of questions. She was asking about the CAEP report, item 25B. I'm trying to scroll up and find that question. It says on CAEP report for 25B, marked employment outcome, but did not qualify for CAEP. Are those students there because they're enrolled in ESL or ASE? I don't have a copy of a report handy. Do you happen to have one in your downloads directory or something you could bring up? Or maybe we could just work on this one offline. That's okay too.
Let me see. Okay, so this is item
25.
There's a lot of items to go through here.
There it is. It says marked employment outcome, but did not qualify for CAEP. I would have to.
Yeah. Go ahead, Janice.
I would have to double check with Richard Ackerman and make a distinction on exactly what's the difference between 25A and B with CAEP. I think that it would have already thrown out the ones that weren't identified with a program up at the very top. So like what would be the last reasons? Is it the 12 hours? Is that applying at this point or not? I'm not sure. I would have to, there's something missing, but usually they don't get all the way down to 25 if there's, a missing birthday or they've already been thrown out. It's kind of a sequential thing.
And Janice, I'm going to rely on you a little more. There's more questions coming in. So
I see that. Go
so
ahead.
Are there definitions for each? So are there definitions for each item?
Usually Jay covers that when he gets into his go down. I think it's called deeper dive with CAEP data integrity. And he went through all the different items of the report in great detail. It could be, Galena mentions because of less than 12 hours. That would be my favorite guess. That's usually what it is. If you're actually in TE and you run the report, Elsa mentions that you can right click. Like right now we're looking here at a PDF file, which is just a static flat file. If you're actually in TOPS Pro and you run the data integrity report, you can hover your mouse over the item count, which is that middle column where it says 50, and you can right click on it and it would take you into a bunch of the different drill down options and you can research and see what it is because of it. But this guess, I would bet it has to do with the 12 hours or the number of programs. That's usually what it is. Sandy Kawamura says the same thing, dropped due to not enough hours.
And then from Jill, we have a question. Do we need to designate each class as special programs, distance learning? So special programs is a column to designate. And is this where we mark them as distance learning, Janice?
Special programs distance learning applies to both students and classes. So you can have a student that's enrolled in a class and the class itself is like anything greater than 50% would qualify it based on the Octave definition of a quote distance learning class because of the majority is delivered in a non-face-to-face environment. So the class could be marked as special programs distance learning, or you could have a student, like it oftentimes applies to a high school diploma student, and they're just 100% working from home, taking classes, doing whatever. And at whatever point in the enrollment process, you can mark that student as being special program entry equals distance learning. It can go either way. Then when you run the reports, many of the reports, you can use the option of, I just want to see those hours that are accumulated, like the NRS table 4. I want to see just some of the reports with distance learning hours only, or face-to-face hours only, or the combined two together. Well, Veronica, you've got the link there for Jay's deeper dive webinar with more information there. That's a great one.
Yes, it is. Okay, so I think we are almost to our hour mark. If there are any other questions, let us know. I'll give it one more minute and then we can turn it over to Veronica. If you have a specific question that maybe you want to email both me and Janice, and I'm going to, here's my email, and I can always include Janice on anything that you want to email us, but we can definitely answer those questions for you. I'm a fairly quick emailer, I would say.
I would say so.
Yeah, I think people would agree with me on text messaging too, but it relates. So feel free to email me if you have any questions. If you even just want to say, hey, can you let me know that I did this right? I'm very open to emailing you back and letting you know and double checking. But I'll give it one more minute for any other questions, but I think that's pretty much it.
That's right. Nicole and I, from the CASA side, we have the same tools that the technical support team have so that you can say, I'm agency 1108. Can you take a quick look at this one thing I'm seeing in my data integrity report? And we can actually go into your data and see what's going on and sort of look at it with you alongside. And that's usually pretty helpful.
Okay, and I don't think I see any more questions, so I'll take it back to you, Veronica, for any last words.
All right, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Janice, for today's webinar, the PowerPoint, as well as the live demonstration of using the new wizard. In the chat, I posted the webpage of where this webinar recording as well as the PowerPoint presentation will be uploaded. So again, if you want to access these materials at another time, or if you'd like to share with another colleague who was unable to attend today, you are more than welcome to do so. We will have the webinar recording as well as the PowerPoint uploaded by the end of the week. So definitely please check back. I'm not seeing anything else. So thank you all very much for your time and your participation. And I hope everyone has a great day.
And I promised to follow up with a few people that had the questions about concurrent, with Margot's question about update records, with the question about citizenship preparation, and just an additional one on that 25B from the CAEP report. Those are my to-dos.
Yes, and then I think I have a question too about the consortium manager, but I will get back to that. But thank you all. I really appreciate everybody who was able to attend, all 100 plus of you.
Great.
Thank you, Veronica.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Veronica.
You're welcome. Everyone have a great afternoon.